In Mexico, there is about one kidnapping every 60 minutes, which is why rich families are forced to have themselves and their families protected by bodyguards and necessary service to activate kidnapping insurance. In the next scene, we are introduced to John Creasy, a former CIA assassin who fights alcoholism and regrets his actions in the CIA. He comes to Mexico to visit his former colleague, Rayburn, who now has a good life in Mexico and owns a security company. Rayburn expresses how happy he is to see his friend again and wonders if John plans to stay in the country, but John says that he is not sure about staying in one place. On the other hand, we are introduced to Samuel Ramos, an automaker meeting with his lawyer, Jordan Cavs, a close friend of his late father. Samuel is forced to fire his former bodyguard, a requirement of having kidnapping insurance, and needs to find a new one as soon as possible before his policy. Jordan advises him to get a cheap bodyguard to enforce the policy, and then he can fire him. When Rayburn got the news, he immediately informed John and said that he would be a good fit for this role. However, John is worried about his alcohol problem and lack of communication skills, but Rayburn tells him that even though he's not that fast, he is still very good. Rayburn tells John about Samuel and insists that he take the job. In the next scene, John got dressed and then met with Samuel, who was impressed with his resume. John told Samuel bluntly that he drinks, and if the professionals try to kidnap his son, he will do everything he can. And if the thugs are insignificant, he will probably kill them. Samuel liked his behavior, but he encouraged John to keep his drinking a secret from his wife for a while. They arrived at Samuel's mansion, where John met his wife, Lisa, an American expatriate from Texas. They were both happy to meet another American there. Lisa offered John wine, which he immediately accepted. Lisa found out that he had no family and introduced him to their daughter, Peta, who asked John to show him his room. Samuel was impressed that his wife immediately accepted John, but he was comfortable doing a deal with an American. That night, John was sitting alone, visited by his problems, drinking and playing with his gun. John planned his route for the next day before taking Peta to school. While in the car, Peta started asking him a lot of questions, which irritated John a bit, but he allowed it and took her safe to school. When the afternoon came, he picked her up from school according to the schedule. While they were going back, she showered him with many questions again. This time, John was full of it and ordered her to stop. Peta was disappointed, so she moved to the back seat of the car and was very sad. When they got home, Lisa stopped by to say hello to John. She told John that Peta just wanted to be friends with him, but John reminded her that he was the girl's bodyguard, not a friend, so Lisa stopped and left. That night, John left drinking until he was drunk and tried to end his life, but the gun didn't fire. He called Rayburn and asked if there was any reason a 9mm handgun wouldn't fire, but Ray knew what was going on and told John that the bullet doesn't lie. After considering it as a sign, John decides to commit to working as a bodyguard. The next day, John is driving both Peta and Lisa when he notices a car following them. He writes down the license plate number. Peta, being very observant, realizes something is off, writes the number down too. Later, they discover that the car isn't around anymore, so John takes Peta to school. Later that day, Peta is with John during her swimming class. He watches Peta preparing for her race, which she is late and is unable to finish the swim. While in the car, John told Peta that he was a strong swimmer. The child also admitted that she knew she wouldn't win, so John advised her that if he could get off the starting line quickly, she would win the competition. The next day, Lisa and Samuel leave for America. After class, John decides to help Peta with her swimming. He helps her get over her fear of the gunshot and tells her she just needs to concentrate on swimming and not on the noise around her. Later that day, while John helps Peta with her homework, the girl tells a joke and is happy to see John smile for the first time. Because Peta's swimming competition was coming up, John again took the time to train her in her swimming techniques. A few days later, Samuel came back with Lisa and brought a dog as a gift for Peta. The next day, Peta showed off her swimming skills with Bruno and Maria cheering for her and managed to get a good time. When the day of the competition came, all their training paid off as she took first place. Peta and John shared a hug in their celebration. Samuel and Lisa attended a business meeting, so John took Peta to lunch with Rayburn, where the girl gave him a pendant she insisted she bought with her own money as a thank you gift. That night, John sat alone. He opened a bottle of wine but instead chose to take his Bible. The next day, John took Peta to her piano lesson and waited outside with her pet dog. While waiting, he noticed police cars blocking both ends of the street. Then he saw the car that had followed them the other day and realized that Peta was in danger. John told Peta to run immediately, but he ended up being shot. Despite this, he managed to kill 4 of the kidnappers but received several bullet wounds in the chest. Peta, who couldn't left him behind, rushed to him crying and was quickly grabbed and taken. John, despite being severely injured, managed to survive but was accused by Mexican police of killing 2 officers and suspected of involvement in Peta's kidnapping. A reporter stated that the 2 policemen were supposed to be off duty, but the chief ignored his question and said that they died for the law. Meanwhile, Samuel and Jordan were at home, vowing to rescue Peta. Moments later, an official from the anti-kidnapping division, Victor Fuentes, arrived to assist negotiations. Despite Jordan's insistence on handling it personally, Victor showed them an order from the Attorney General because of the involvement of the 2 policemen in the case. Later, Rayburn visited John with AFI agent Miguel and transferred John to a veterinary clinic to protect him from corrupt police officers. Soon after, Samuel receives a call from the leader of the kidnapping group, who calls himself The Voice, and demands $10 million that Samuel somehow prepared immediately. Later, when the money is ready, The Voice gives them instructions on where to drop it. In the next scene, Samuel places the money in the back of a car, but the kidnappers are ambushed by an unknown man. In the middle of the chaos, The Voice's nephew is killed. Believing that Samuel's family was responsible, The Voice informed them that they would kill Peta as retaliation. Lisa tried to plead with the man, but he said it was too late, so she ordered all the police to leave her house. When John recovered, Rayburn delivered the shocking news that Peta was killed after a problem occurred during the money drop, which greatly angered John. A while later, the police arrived to visit him and showed him pictures of possible suspects. At that time, John recognized one of the men but did not say anything. It turns out that the kidnappers were part of a powerful gang called the Brotherhood, composed of corrupt officials, police, and criminals. Later, Rayburn and John were on their way, and he planned to return John to America. However, John chose to stay and went to the scene of the crime. While there, he was approached by a reporter named Maria, who told him about the Brotherhood and offered to help him. Later, John stopped by the house to get some of his things and then went to Peter's room. Lisa came in crying and said she didn't know what she was going to do now. She asked John what he planned to do. John replied that he planned to kill everyone involved in the crime. Lisa told him to go ahead, gave him Peta's stuffed toy, and kissed him before leaving the bedroom. With the help of Rayburn, John obtained some powerful weapons and prepared to go to war. Later on, Maria gave John the details of the vehicle that had been following him and ambushed the man who owned it. John tied his hands to the steering wheel and promised that the man would feel pain if he didn't answer his questions. The man had no idea who he was dealing with, so John began torturing him. When almost only 2 fingers and 1 ear were left on him, the police officer admitted that they had been given orders by an unknown person to abduct Peta and told John about a club where the 3 remaining kidnappers, who called themselves the Guardian, hung out. John thanked him for the information, gave him a cigarette, and then placed a bullet in his head. He watched as the man's car went straight off a cliff. John soon arrived at the club, where he pointed a gun at the bouncer and forced him to take him to the back room. Upon entering, he saw 3 kidnappers, 2 men and a woman. At first, they refused to talk, so John killed one of the men. In fear, one of them started talking. They told John about the business and gave him the ATM card used to collect the payments. Additionally, John discovered information about the stolen ransom money and learned that Victor Fuentes was also working for the Brotherhood. After John killed the man, the female kidnapper said she saw them hurting Peta and putting her in a car. The woman revealed where they had taken the girl. John hoped it was Peta, but it turned out to be another kidnapped girl. He immediately freed the poor child before setting the entire back room on fire. He then opened fire on the dance floor, sending the crowd out before the building exploded. Eventually, he contacted Maria, who immediately went to the location. He handed her the ATM card of one of the kidnappers and instructed her to find out who was depositing money into the account. During their conversation, John discovered that Victor Fuentes was the one who pressured Samuel to use the money drop-off system for the kidnappers, and even worse, he was the leader of the Brotherhood. Meanwhile, Rayburn was being interviewed by Miguel, who wanted to know more about John. Rayburn only described John as an artist of death who was about to paint his masterpiece. At the same time, John went to a location where Victor's security convoy was set to pass. He gained access to an apartment with a high view of the street, preparing for his next move. When the cars were spotted, John used a rocket launcher to blow up the first car. As the other cars tried to escape, John rushed in and killed all the guards surrounding the officer before kidnapping Victor and taking him to the exact location where the ransom was stolen. There, John stripped Victor of his clothes and tied his hands to the hood of his car. John then explained that he had planted a small but powerful explosive in Victor's back with a 5-minute timer. John ordered Victor to explain what had happened to the ransom money. Victor confessed that he had seen an opportunity to get rich and took it. He added that the ransom money amounted to only $5 million because the other bag was filled with papers. Finally, Victor revealed that Jordan had something to do with it. The man thought he would be free now, given that he had the information. But John left him there to explode into millions of pieces. After this, John goes to Jordan's house and explores the place, where he finds Jordan's headless body along with a file containing bank account information linked to Samuel. Because of this, John returns to Samuel's mansion to confront him. John warns Samuel and Lisa to answer him, or he will kill them. Samuel admits that Jordan suggested they arrange Peeta's kidnapping in order to claim the insurance payout and pay off his father's debts. Even though the kidnappers promised to return Peeta safely, when Victor interfered with the ransom drop, Samuel blamed Jordan for Peeta's death and he killed him. Lisa, now aware of Samuel's involvement, angrily told John to kill her husband, or she would do it herself. John then leaves Samuel his gun, with the same bullet he tried to use to take his own life, and tells him that the bullet always tells the truth. After John left, a repentant Samuel shoots himself. Meanwhile, Maria and Miguel track the ATM card to the Voice's wife and find his address, which allows Miguel's officers to enter his home and get a picture of the Voice. Despite the Brotherhood's threats, Maria publishes the picture and gives the address to John. To complete his revenge, John went to the given address and entered the compound. He slowly entered the house but was shot in the chest by the Voice's brother, who then tried to escape. Luckily, John stopped him, causing him to crash. John dragged the man back to the house, where he discovered that the Voice's real name was Daniel and instructed them to contact him. John received a call from Daniel, who offered John money for his family. But John cut off his brother's fingers and told him that he was the one he wanted. Daniel suddenly revealed that Peeta was still alive and offered to trade her for his brother, which John immediately accepted. After this, John called Lisa, who told him that Peeta might still be alive and instructed her to meet him at an overpass where the exchange would take place. Moments later, both John and Lisa arrived at the location where he told Lisa to hold Daniel's brother at gunpoint until he could get Peeta back. John, injured and weak, staggered to the exchange spot where the men were waiting for him on the other side. In the middle of the overpass, John was reunited with Peeta and told the child that he loved her very much before sending her to her mother. In the end, Peeta and Lisa were reunited and happily embraced each other. John surrendered to the armed men and looked at Peeta one last time before the men placed him into the vehicle. Fortunately, before they could hurt him, John died from a bullet wound. In the last scene, Miguel tracked Daniel and shot him during the arrest. And this is where the movie ends. Please press the like button if you like the movie.